I was recently reading a blog which was posted on the IMF website. It read that the global GDP loss because of the pandemic crisis could be more than $9 trillion. Well, really, did you understand what I was talking about right now? Hi guys, Rachana Ranade here, and I welcome you all to a brand new video series. Well, I'm sure you might be curious to know what the new video series is going to be about. It's going to be about the impact of COVID-19 on our economy. But the problem is that the topic is too vast to cover at one go. So what I thought is I should break down this entire topic into smaller parts wherein I would be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on specific sectors as such. So in our today's video, we are going to cover few sectors. Okay, before we move on sector specific, let's try to understand a few terms that I used in the very first part of the video. Number one, I used the term IMF. IMF is nothing but International Monetary Fund. Okay, IMF has lots of roles and responsibilities, but one of the key responsibility is to track the global economy. So understand this in such a fashion that like every country will have some organization which tracks the economy of that specific country. So every country will look at their own economic growth. But wouldn't it be great if there is an overall, there is an organization which looks not only at a country's economy but at the overall global economy, and that is done by IMF. I hope IMF's one of the key role is clear. Second one is GDP. What is GDP? Gross Domestic Product. It can be calculated in various ways, but if I use the simplest one, which is the income approach, what does that mean? $9 trillion of GDP means what? The total income of India. Okay, that can be the simplest explanation. Total income of India is equal to $9 trillion. Okay, but I did not use the word India's GDP. I used the word global GDP could lose around $9 trillion. So what does that mean? Income of all the countries across the world that could get reduced, that could lower down by $9 trillion. Okay, the very next question is, how much is $9 trillion? For Indians, it is a little bit difficult to absorb million, billion, trillion. I had explained this in one of my previous videos, but just remember it in this way. 10 lakhs is 1 million. So 6 zeros is 1 million. Just keep on adding 3 zeros for moving from million to billion to trillion. Okay. So if 6 zeros is 1 million, 9 zeros is 1 billion, and 12 zeros is 1 trillion. So to put it in our terminology, $9 trillion is 9 lakh crore rupees. Ooh, that's big, isn't it? And the last one, the terminology I used is, it is because of the effect of the pandemic crisis which we are going through. I'm sure everyone knows what is pandemic now, but like just 5 months ago, I'm sure no one knew this word. So everyone knew what is an epidemic. It's like an outbreak of a disease in a specific area, but when it becomes global, then it becomes a pandemic. I hope all the terms which I used in the very first section of the video are clear. Now let us move on with the sectoral impact. Now let's talk about a sector which contributes significantly to our GDP, which is the fourth largest sector in our economy, and that is FMCG. Let's try to understand the impact of the pandemic right now on FMCG sector in India. If I were to go in a very logical sequence for any FMCG company, see, the very first thing is going to be a raw material procurement. Second step is going to be the production process. Third step is going to be demand, which will lead to sale. And fourth step is going to be realizing the money against which the sales has been made. Okay. So let us go step by step. The very first one is what? Raw material procurement. The problem here is that majority of the supply chain management is right now, I may not say at a standstill as such, but is definitely disrupted. Now, what do we mean by this? Because there are a lot of checkposts and the free movement of goods in our country is not as free right now. So the pace at which raw material could have been procured before the pandemic versus current situation, I feel that raw material procurement itself is a big challenge for FMCG sector as a number one a problem. Number two, okay, even if raw material has been procured, do you think that the production is going to be very smooth right now? Answer is still maybe no. Why? Because there are labor problems. Number two, because of the lower demand, the factories might not themselves work at full capacity. So let us say whatever is their current capacity, they might be working at, let us say, 70% capacity, 60% capacity because of the overall economic position. So production also itself is less. Number three, the sales demand also has dropped. I completely understand that FMCG sector is not as badly hit as other sectors, but so please understand, FMCG can still be divided into two parts. One can be essentials and one can be luxury items. What do you think? Essential items, do you think are really hit? Comparatively, I may say to a lower extent. But what about luxury goods? They are definitely impacted. So the sales itself might have dropped because of the luxury items in the FMCG sector. And number four, even if sales are on track, do you think the realization from sale, because companies are going to sell on credit, do you think the debtors are going to pay, the customers are going to pay them in time? No. So if the customers don't pay them in time, do you think the liquidity might be a problem for this? Okay, I hope you have understood what I talked about in the previous section. Four major impacts for the FMCG. Number one, raw material procurement. Number two, production. Number three, sales. And number four, which is going to be the liquidity impact. Okay, realization of sales. All four are going to be impacted in some way or the other. As I mentioned in the previous segment, not as bad as other sectors, but yes, surely to some extent for FMCG sector. Question is, once things get better, maybe a vaccine is found, maybe some medicine, some cure is found, the worst is going to be over. What kind of recovery can we expect in the FMCG sector is the next big question. So I may say there could be two types of recoveries in FMCG sector. One for essentials, one for luxury items. For essentials, there is something known as a V-shaped recovery. Okay, now what is a V-shaped recovery? The pace at which the demand falls, the pace at which the sales have fallen, the pace at which the liquidity crunch has happened, versus the pace of recovery is also going to be the same. Now, why does this happen? It's essentials. Because of the pandemic, things might get disrupted, but because the products are essential in nature, the pace of fall and the pace of rise is almost going to be the same. I hope you agree with this. But the next thing is, what about the non-essential products, like the luxury items? Examples of such could be like shampoos, high-end shampoos, or it could be like chocolates, it could be makeup items, right? For such things, a U-shaped recovery is what we expect. So what is a U-shaped recovery? The fall is definitely is at a big pace. But the recovery after the fall, the recovery is not like cut. It does not happen right away. It's the recovery. So whatever you can see at the bottom of the U shape, the recovery is a little bit sluggish, is a little bit slow. Okay. Once things start getting back to normalcy after that, gestation period, after that small period of whatever X number of months, the bottom of the U, once things get back absolutely to normal, then things may start boosting up at a higher pace. So I hope you have understood this. FMCG, I divided it into two categories. One is essentials, one is non-essentials or luxury. For essentials, we do expect a V-shaped recovery, but for non-essentials, it could be something like a U-shaped recovery where things will get back to normal, but comparatively at a lower pace. Okay, let's move on with the second sector, which is the worst hit sector since last 1 year, and now things are going maybe from bad to worst, and that sector is automobiles and spares. Now again, let's go in a very logical sequence. Number one, raw material procurement. You might be aware that Germany is one of the hubs for anything related to automobiles. Now the problem is that Germany is one of the countries which is pretty badly hit by the pandemic. Now, do you think getting raw material from such a country is going to be tough? Answer is obviously yes. So raw material procurement is a problem. Number two, production capacities. Do you think they are going to be normal right now? Answer is obviously no. The production capacities are definitely hit. Why? Reason is the demand itself is very less. Everyone understands that because of the pandemic, things may worsen in the first quarter of 2020-21. So people might not want to spend money on luxury goods. That is why the demand has still dropped. So on the sales front as well, there are problems. Number 4, generally automobile sector, majority of the companies, I'm not saying all the companies, many companies have heavy debt. Now if companies already have heavy debt, on top of that, there is a drop in sales. Liquidity crunch is going to be a very, very big problem for them. If you want to understand this specific point in much more detail, I think you should check out this video where I did a separate lecture on debt to equity, how it impacts the financials. So all in all, I think it's a pretty gloomy picture for automobiles and spares sector. Now let's try to understand what impacts what could be the impacts on automobile and spares sector post COVID-19 recovery. I personally feel for at least 2 more quarters post COVID-19, the sector is not going to see a very, very high growth, is my thought process. There was an interview of one of the top personnel from Maruti Suzuki. He said that people will not prefer to travel by passenger cars or public transport for that matter. So people will opt for four-wheelers, and that is why the sales of four-wheeler cars might zoom up. Of course, I should not be contradicting with people of such high profile, but unfortunately, I have a different view. I personally feel that if people's salary might be at stake, if people's salary is cut, if people are would face the threat of unemployment, do you really feel that people will spend money on four-wheelers? I understand and appreciate the fact that people still might not prefer public transport, but if that be so, I would have preferred to buy a two-wheeler rather than buying directly a four-wheeler. So I personally feel that post COVID-19, unless and until people have excess money to spend, they will not go for four-wheelers. I feel that the recovery in two-wheeler segment might be a little bit high as compared to four-wheeler. Do let me know your thoughts as well in the comment section, because this is the one which I feel I should have a feedback from majority of you. Now let's talk about the pharma sector. I will go in a little bit reverse way in the pharma sector, because I generally start with raw material, then production, then demand, then recovery. Here I will go in a little bit reverse way. Let's talk about the demand side, the sales side of pharma sector. Do you think sales have dropped? Do you think demand has dropped, to be more particular? Answer is ideally no. Demand definitely has not dropped. In fact, people might be hoarding sanitizers, and that is what happened because people were facing shortage of sanitizers anywhere and everywhere. I mean, masks, sanitizers were products which people were hoarding like anything. So I think demand was not same. In fact, demand was high for many products, not only sanitizers, masks, but overall medicines and drugs. Okay, demand was definitely high. Number 2, question is, if demand is high, what about production? Production definitely sees a big question mark. Production might not be able to meet the demand. Okay, a very, very important note here is about the sales side again. Okay, did you know that India is one of the major exporters of many generic medicines? Okay, generic medicines are medicines which have the same properties of branded medicines, but only thing they don't carry a brand. So for example, a tablet like Crocin, we know it by Crocin because it's branded as Crocin, okay, but all the medical properties of that tablet, but which doesn't have any brand attached to it, that is known as a generic medicine. Because there is no brand attached to it, it is pretty cheap, no marketing cost basically. So such generic medicines which have all the good properties are exported in huge numbers from India. India is one of the major exporters of such pharma products. Frankly speaking, before I started research on the pharma sector, even I did not know about this, that India does export a lot of pharma products. So understand this. Is the sales only, is the demand only from domestic India? No, it is even from abroad. Now what is the problem? Problem is that even if we are supplying a lot of medicines, raw material, that is the problem. What is the problem? 70% of the raw material comes from China. Now, if 70% of the pharma raw material is coming from China, I hope you, there's no need to explain that. Of course, the supply chain of raw material from China to India is disrupted. On top of that, what has happened? Whatever is coming in, even if we are manufacturing or even if we are trying to find a raw material substitute for that, many governmental authorities did try to ban certain exports. Reason being that we wanted to ensure that our people, our country's people don't face any shortage of medicines, which is logically correct, but here maybe a more global view might have been taken, and that is the reason why there was a news where Modi ji actually removed ban on certain products regarding exports, and exports resumed from India to USA. Okay, so please understand, pharma sector is on a different track. Has the demand gone down? Answer is no. Has the production been disrupted? Answer is yes. So what can we expect post 19? Well, post COVID-19, I believe that people will be more cautious. They'll be, taking better care of themselves. So I feel that overall hygiene related products demand will definitely be on a higher side. In fact, number two, I feel that even government might give pharma companies some additional aid so that they are able to keep up with the production and satisfy the demand from the general public. There could be some tax benefits which also might come in the way of pharma sector. So all in all, I feel that whatever sectors we discussed today, pharma is much better placed as compared to other sectors. Oh, well, I hope you have understood whatever we discussed today about the economy impact on few sectors and what could be the economic recovery after COVID-19, number one. Number two, I want you all to tell me if you want me to cover more and more sectors based on the same theme, impact, current impact, and what could happen in the future. Number three, I want you all to comment in the comment section as to what are your views on how economy will recover, and I would really be happy to read out your comments because everyone will have a different work exposure. And for example, if you are working in the automobile sector, you might know the ground realities, and I would really love to know your thought process or your experience in that specific sector. Number four, I hope you are aware about my live streams which I am doing every day at 6 a.m. If you are not aware about that, do join me at 6 a.m. in the live streams. And number five, I hope you are also aware about my 7 p.m. live streams that I'm doing almost every day, wherein I do talk about specific topics and we do take Q&A sessions on that as well. I hope you are enjoying my content. Do consider subscribing to my channel as well as membership. Do consider sharing this video with majority of your friends. Tell them to make a very good use of time during this I should not say holiday time, but during this time wherein you're working from home, I'm sure you're getting a little bit more time for yourself. So invest in knowledge. That's it from my side for the day. Jai Hind and